Welcome to the service clinic at Low Country Harley-Davidson. I'm Doc Harley, and these are pictures of my very first Harley. My very first Harley was a 1959 Panhead. And when I finally saved up enough money to get my first Harley, it was important to me that I service it and that I learn how to service it properly. One of the tools that I needed to acquire is a torque wrench, because on an older motorcycle, you can really over-tighten something and strip it out because it's had a very long life. So during this video, I want to talk about torque wrenches and the different kinds that there are. When I started out, I was very young and not a lot of money, and I needed a torque wrench, so I found myself a beam torque wrench. Yeah, it's not the greatest torque wrench, but it was something to start with. And how it works is the elasticity of this beam here moves when the applied force is doing it. Let me show. When I put it on this bolt here, okay, and you have to hold the handle in the middle and you pull. And this is inch pounds, but you can see that it really has to do with how I'm pulling. I could go past it and I can be shaky and moving it. So in accuracy, it's about 70% accurate, all right? But it was something, it was a torque wrench. It's my first torque wrench, and you can see if you take care of it, it'll last a long time. This is mine from way back 40 years ago, all right? When you move up into the next stage, it's the dial torque. It takes the same principles of proportional to the force you apply, but it has a mechanism that does to the dial. And we can put that on here, and it really has an influence with the, let me get this on here, okay, with how you're doing it, all right? See, it's very sensitive. It's an inch pound, and you can do two things. You can have it on 0 and go to 25, 50, or you can set this at the 50 and then pull it to 0. So it was a lot better than the dial indicator. It was more accurate, but there's still a very high influence on the torque. I can go past the torque with me pulling on it, and when you're in a different position on the motorcycle, it's hard to see the dial indicator on it, so it has its flaws, but it was better than the beam. Then I moved up to click style. Click style has a spring internally, and you turn to the torque that you want set on the dial, and then inside there's a pawl. So when you pull, you hear a click. And that's when you stop. You reach the torque setting. Now, yes, you can abuse it and keep going on it, but you really want to just stop when it clicks. And the click has been my standard for many, many years, and it comes in different sizes. I use the quarter drive for a lot of the top end on motors, for the rocker boxes and small quarter-inch drive. I also have my big half-inch. I use this for axles and for compensating sprockets. Big heavy duty. And this thing starts out at 50 and goes up to 250. This starts at 30. So I needed something even finer, and that was this torque wrench. It's a click style, but it starts at 5 and goes up to 40. And fuel doors take 20 inch-pounds. So I needed to have something that would really click at a very fine, where my regular spring-loaded one would start at 30. I needed something a little bit more finer on it. And this is what I use every day. Now, I forgot to tell you that this is a great torque wrench for servicing, because you don't have to keep changing to each little torque setting that you have in your manual. You can just go check, check, check. And when you're checking torques, you do the lowest setting in the book. If it doesn't move, you're set, okay? If it moves, then you really need to take the bolt off, clean it, put the Loctite or not Loctite, depending on the manual, put it in there, and then do the torque in the middle of the setting. You're usually giving a wide variety, and you take the middle setting on the dial. Same thing with the clicker. All right, when I started really building motors on a very professional basis and wanted to get really accurate, and really started in the evolution days, when the tolerances were a lot tighter than the Panhead and the shovel head, well, then I went to the digital. Digital is really nice on a couple of levels. One, it offers you the foot-pounds and inch-pounds and Newton meters, and it allows you to change that, and you can really fine-tune how you want how the torque to be. And the nice thing about electronic ones is that you could have this above on top and you don't have to see it. You can set this. Let me set this down lower here. Okay, and when I pull, well, I'm pulling too much for the vise here. Let's go a little lower on it. It beeps and it vibrates. So I don't really have to see the display. I can just feel it and go, okay, I'm done, and I can move on. So this is a really big advantage to not being able to see where you are torquing it down. The last thing I want to talk to you about, electronic torque has come a long, long way, and the added feature on this one here is the 90-degree capability on head bolts, on twin cams and evolutions and M8s. You have a final torque of moving the head bolt 90 degrees for the final. And this really helps instead of guessing how far you've turned the 90 degree on it. So they've come a long way. Now, price-wise, yeah, the beam was what I could accept when I was 40 years younger, all right? And the dial was just a little bit more expensive. The clickers, that's my mainstay, and they are a very good price range for somebody who's working on their bike in their garage. The electronic ones, they've gone sky high, and they have a little caveat, Achilles heel I call it. It's the electronics and the batteries. There's nothing like working on your motorcycle and all of a sudden you have it show BATT, battery, low. You have to keep batteries on hand for these. So the electric ones are fantastic in accuracy, but they have a little problem that you have to work with on it, and they're very expensive. Yeah, and this one here, yeah, we're talking very expensive, but they last. And I have to remember too that with torque wrenches, especially the click and the electronic, where you purchase it, like the tool places, you can have it recalibrated. Check every year, because they do wear. I mean, you're tightening the springs and untightening, and that's a good point too. When you're done with a spring type clicker, undo it all the way and clean it up and put it in its case. Take care of your tools because they're expensive and they need to be as accurate as possible when you're doing your job. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Doc Harley. We'll see you next week.